Hi from me, Lauren Joffe, and welcome to another episode of Derech Eretz. Innovation is one of the ways the world keeps moving forward. Today we learn all about forward-thinking, modest fashion with Rebbitzin Sarah Feltman, and Harris Mowbray talks to how he created Braille systems for lesser-known languages. But first, Rabbi Greg Alexander tells us more about innovation from a Torah perspective.
How has Judaism lasted for 4,000 years? One of the core reasons is because Judaism has consistently reinvented itself throughout that whole period. Now, sometimes that has been forced upon it by forces outside of our control, but it's also by design built within. And I'll give you an example of each. Let me start with outside. Probably the greatest change or revolution that has happened in Judaism happened about 2,000 years ago. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, and a tradition of worship that had lasted for thousands of years came to an end. If you look at the Torah and you read what Judaism involved from 3,500 years ago, it was all centered around sacrifice. People would come to the temple in Jerusalem, they would bring their sacrifices, and the Kohanim, the priests, would take care of it. This was the core, established way of connecting with God of the time. And 2,000 years ago, it dramatically came to an end. Now, the Jewish leadership at the time were faced with a choice. Either they could wait for the temple to be rebuilt. And still today, people would love to see that temple rebuilt, but it hasn't been so. They would have been waiting for 2,000 years. Or alternatively, they could innovate. And that's exactly what happened. Everything that used to happen in the temple was transformed into something that could happen in your home, or in the new, exciting community home, the synagogue. What this meant is that Judaism became, from a religion that was based in one place in Jerusalem, to a religion that was portable and could be taken anywhere. Wherever you lived and wherever you gathered became your home or your synagogue, the place where Judaism could happen. Where it used to be sacrifice, it was now prayer and study. Where it used to be in the hands of a small group of leadership, the Kohanim, it was now democratized into every Jewish home, every family, and any person, irrespective of who your father or grandfather was, could become a Jewish leader or a rabbi teacher in the Jewish people. Now, I said that this was actually by design, even though sometimes outside circumstances forced change. Judaism has always been a religion of innovation. If you think about the moon, every lunar month, the moon begins with just a sliver, it grows to its fullness, and then it shrinks away. The beginning of every month is called Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a Jewish month, the way that we count our calendar. Every month begins with Rosh Chodesh, a celebration of that month. And Chodesh, connected with the month and the moon, comes from the word Chadash, new. Lehit Chadesh, to renew, is built into the idea of Judaism. From the days of biblical Judaism to the innovations of 2,000 years ago that I've spoken about, you can see how Judaism reinvents itself through the period of the Mishnah and the Talmud, into the medieval period, into the modern period, and still today, as rabbis and Jewish leaders and Jewish innovators all around the world look around and say, how can we bring Judaism to the challenges of today? How do we do this? Primarily, not by starting with an answer, but starting with a question. When the Nobel physicist Isidore Rabi won the Nobel Prize, in his acceptance speech, He said, when I was a kid, I was in this immigrant community in Brooklyn, and the people around me were becoming doctors and lawyers and business people. Why did I end up being a scientist? Well, it's because of my mother. When she used to see me at the end of the day, all the other mothers were asking their kids, "So, Nu, what did you learn at school today?" But my mother never said that. She said, "Izzy, what question did you ask at school today?" And because of that, that's why I became a scientist. Judaism is a religion of questions. Hopefully, we'll come to some answers too. But as long as we keep asking the questions, we will continue to innovate and face the challenges of the day.
Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz.
Rebbitzin Sarah Feldman loves fashion so much that she decided to start her own fashion line. Today we chat to her about how modesty and fashion can coexist.
Modesty's played a big role in Judaism, and it's not just with what we wear, it's how we act, it's how we speak. And, practically there are certain guidelines with dressing modestly that we're told, to cover our knees, cover our elbows, our necklines shouldn't be too low. So there are different guidelines that we're told to keep, and modesty brings out your inner beauty. So when we dress modestly, we actually are not showing people that it's really about our body, but that we have more to offer than just our bodies. So I was interviewed on top radio stations and in magazines, fashion magazines, about how to make Judaism relatable, and can you be modest and trendy and fashionable at the same time. And that's really what got me thinking that, there's really a place for making beautiful, modest, accessible, modest fashion for women without having to layer and look frumpy, but, you can look beautiful and modest at the same time. I always loved fashion. We would travel a lot, my parents being American, go overseas, and that was the first thing. I would go to Manhattan and check out the shops and come home with bags of clothing. So I always loved, clothes, shoes, bags. I never dreamed that I would have my own brand. I never studied fashion. I don't know anything about how to sew even. I've just outsourced everything from, I started off with 6 styles. I had a friend who was a pattern maker, and so I designed 6 styles, and she gave it to a CMT to start off with. Now I'm using local manufacturers, 2 different local manufacturers. It's all made locally. In the beginning of 2021, I met a guy from Zimbabwe who makes bags, and I started with giving him a sample because I couldn't find a practical moon bag or crossbody bag that was just not bulky, small enough to carry my keys, my phone, and I just couldn't find a nice leather bag, and I decided to design one. And I started off in the beginning of 2021 with the Sarah Feldman 2-way bag. So it's you can wear a crossbody or as a moon bag. You just adjust the strap, and it's been so popular, thank God. So he's actually employed 3 other people. So it's really when someone buys a Sarah Feldman bag, they're literally supporting 4 families. And now I'm making shoes also using a local manufacturer with leather shoes. So it's definitely expanded from the 6 styles that I started off with. I've got about 30 styles now, and now the bags have kind of taken over with the shoes. I think there's a big misconception when people hear the word modest. They automatically think okay, that's not for me. But modest fashion has become like a billion-dollar business, like overseas. I mean, it's huge. And, you know, if you walk into any high-end fashion store these days, you'll see so many modest options. There's so many dresses, so many options of dressing modestly. It's not old-fashioned at all. It's actually trendy and fashionable to be dressing modestly these days. And the world's changing all the time, and modest fashion is too. You know, I remember really struggling as a kid to find modest clothes in the stores, and these days it's amazing how modest fashion has really become like a billion-dollar business. If you go to any high-end fashion label, fashion brand, you will definitely find beautiful, modest clothing. So modest fashion has really been up there with the change and the innovation of the world. I think that my whole brand is innovative because there wasn't anything really like that at the time when I started, and I've really evolved with it. You know, with the bag during COVID, we could have, people weren't really buying clothing, you weren't really going out. I mean, obviously I did more casual wear during COVID, where people weren't really dressing up with dresses, but I kind of took an opportunity where I knew something was needed. I couldn't find it, and I found local manufacturers and created local employment. And now it's not just people looking for modest clothing that are buying from me, it's all women, all walks of life, from all over, and like ranging, all ages. So it's really gotten my brand out there more because it's not just catering to people who dress modestly. And I've also done collaborations with Muslim bloggers, where they wore my dresses and also used the hashtag uniting women through fashion, because we have to dress the same, we may as well support each other. And I've actually met some really special women through that collaboration. Obviously I love fashion and all, but my passion is also to empower women. And a woman opens up her closet, puts on a beautiful dress and feels beautiful, their whole day is, just runs smoothly. And a woman has such power in her home to create the atmosphere in her home. If your mom wakes up in a bad mood, the whole house is in a bad mood. So I'd really love to empower women, by feeling beautiful, by looking beautiful. They can take on anything. And besides for making, Judaism accessible, and that's a lot of people have told me, how accessible it makes Judaism. It looks easy being Jewish, being Orthodox. And I started a group of women on a Wednesday morning. We do different mountain walks every Wednesday from all walks of life, and I share some inspiration with them for their day. And I've started also with soul circles on a Saturday morning for women in the community, and just creating that sense of community for women. I have also collaborated with Relate, which is an organization that supports women in the townships. They bead beautiful bracelets, and I designed a 4-way chain which can be used for a mask holder or glasses or sunglasses or a bracelet or a necklace. And I gift each customer who buys a Sarah Feldman product with the 4-way chain. So supporting, we called it, the hashtag was purchase with purpose. So when you're buying a Sarah Feldman item, you're actually making a difference. My original vision of the brand was really to make modesty was to show that modesty can be like normal and mainstream. But that was just part of my overall vision. It's always been to show people like an accessible, relatable Judaism. But for me, the brand's always been more than just about clothes. And it's really a vehicle through which I can empower women and promote a spiritual and positive lifestyle for them. That is my Derech Eretz.
Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz.
Accessibility and innovation go hand in hand, but the world can be difficult to navigate when the language you speak isn't a dominant one, even more so when you're visually impaired. But Harris Mowbray decided to take innovation into his own hands and make sure that Braille is accessible in lesser-known languages.
Braille is a system of raised tactile dots that visually impaired or blind people use to read. Every letter and punctuation mark has its own unique symbol, a combination of the 6 dots on the 3x2 grid, which form different shapes, thereby representing different letters. It exists more or less the same for each language. For example, the English letter for is the same symbol for the Hebrew aleph, because they're considered kind of the same, or how like G is the same as the Hebrew gimel. This makes it so that if you know Braille in one language, it's very easy most of the time to learn Braille for another language. I would say that even though I live in the United States, a country not really known for knowing more than one language, I would say I was exposed to many at a young age. For example, I learned how to read and write Hebrew when I was very young in religious after-school programs. I learned Spanish when I was in middle school. I then decided to try to teach myself Portuguese. And then when I was in school, I studied abroad in Greece, then later studied abroad in Poland. And then my grandfather is now teaching us Yiddish. So there's so many languages that are around me in my life. So I would say that that was definitely an influential factor for being interested in languages, knowing a bit about them, and having the curiosity to continue and try to make Braille for a lot of them. Step 1 is research. I have to find languages that have alphabets with many letters that do not exist in English. For example, if a language only uses English letters, then it can just use the English Braille, no problem. But if a language has new innovative letters like S with a line through it or C with an accent, etc., that would be something that shows it necessitates Braille, as you cannot write all of those letters with English Braille. So then I have to come up with Braille assignments for each of those letters. I base it off of international standards that already exist. Step 3, and perhaps the most difficult step by far, is getting the government of a foreign country to accept my project, even though I am a stranger from the United States who does not speak their language and usually knows very little about the bureaucratic process or government or anything. So I have to find organizations in that foreign country, reach out to them, convince them, and explain what I'm doing and how it's helpful. And then there's a very small chance that they'll respond, and an even smaller chance that they will care. But I've had many successes. I've made Braille for maybe over 100 languages, but only in around 10% of instances was it ever accepted by the group I've tried to reach out to, which is a little hard and pretty disheartening and unmotivating at times, but I'm pretty impressed with what I've been able to do so far with just the internet and the help of random organizations that I find on the internet. I would say it's no coincidence that the inventor of Esperanto also was Jewish. For those watching who do not know, Esperanto was a project to create a universal language that everyone could learn and use for international communication, and made to be as easy as possible. I think it's part of the Jewish values to try to help as many people as possible, regardless of ethnicity, religion, or other background. By using communication and making it easier for everyone, we can really help start unite the world and break down barriers that don't need to exist. I have a purpose in life. Maybe I don't know what it is right now, but I'm pretty sure that I want to use technology to help languages in new and innovative ways that people have never thought of before. I mean, there's 7 billion people on Earth, yet there are languages with hundreds that don't have Braille. Why is that? Honestly, I do not know. That question keeps me up at night, but I feel like if I have this unique ability to come up with Braille for languages where millions of native speakers couldn't, there's probably so many other unexplored possibilities in the linguistics realm of new ideas to have that could really help a lot of people. I can say that this whole Braille thing has been a spiritual journey. I've learned a lot about myself, what I want to do with my life, and I'm trying to come up with even more ideas of how I can help small languages and different ethnic groups around the world. Nothing really has changed so much, but I've just gotten a new outlook on life from this, and I hope I can just continue on my path and doing what I'm doing to help all the groups I can.
Well, we've come to the end of the show for this week's episode of Derech Eretz. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message on Derech Eretz Connect. From me, Lauren Jaffe, and the Derech Eretz team, have a beautiful week.